I'm reading from Rays of the One Light. These are commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This week is entitled The Eternal Now. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. When will I find God? Many devotees have asked this question. Because worldly goals require time, usually, for its fulfillment, we imagine time to be a factor on the spiritual path. And so it is, if we think that it is. God is as much with us now as he will ever be. It is not he who needs to come to us, but we who need to come to him. And that process of coming to him is a matter of transforming our self-perception. In the Gospel of St. John, Jesus says, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest? Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white, already to harvest." There is a practical teaching in these words, apart from their statement that we have God already, and we only need to realize that truth. Jesus is saying, lift up your eyes and look. To hold the eyes uplifted is the best position for meditation. For the seat of superconsciousness lies at the point midway between the eyebrows, in the frontal lobe of the brain, just behind that point. This point is known also as the Christ center. By lifting up your eyes and concentrating there, you will find it easier to enter the state of ecstasy. That is why saints in every religion have often been observed during states of deep inner communion with their eyes uplifted, focused on the inner light. White, as Jesus said, all ready to harvest. The Bhagavad Gita goes further into this meditative teaching. In the 6th chapter, it states, holding the spine firm, the neck and head erect and motionless, let the yogi focus his eyes at the starting place of the nose, the point between the eyebrows. Let not his gaze roam elsewhere. In meditation, tell yourself, I have God already. I am alive forever in the divine light. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. This is a beautiful reading this week, and if we only needed one reading for the year, this would be it, because it tells us what we have to do. We think of ourselves as human beings, and we have a job and a family and responsibilities and interests and hobbies and all sorts of activities. But we are really beings of light. We have entered this human form for our, as the scriptures say, education and entertainment. I don't find it very entertaining most of the time, but that was the idea. But as is often said in our teachings, this world is a school. We're born into it to learn wonderful lessons and how to transcend this self that holds us back from merging in the light. As this reading states, I love this part, God is as much with us now as he will ever be. Sri Yukteswar says that to Yogananda. Yogananda asks him, when will I find God? After he's had an experience in superconsciousness. And Sri Yukteswar is telling him, you have God right now. And he's saying that to all of us. We have him right now. What keeps us from realizing that? You know, we look inside, well, I don't see anything. I don't see a light. I don't see anything. Why? Because we're so distracted. Because we keep chasing all these little, like a cat with a butterfly, chasing it. We're looking for something that will fill that void inside, that will make us happy, that will give us fulfillment. It's got to be out there. It's got to be in that new car, or that boyfriend, or that painting that I want, or whatever. We're just grasping at straws. Finally, we sit down and we hold the spine firm and the head erect, and we concentrate at the starting point of the nose, the point between the eyebrows, and that's where it's all happening. When we become deeply, deeply calm, that light appears spontaneously. And that divine grace is magnetically drawn into our human consciousness. What are we waiting for? There's nothing else in this world worth having except that light. You know, if we get a little glimpse of that light, or bliss in the chakras, peace in the vrittis, these are different ways that the scriptures describe the state. If we get even a little taste of that amrita, the divine nectar that flows in deep meditation, we realize, what have I been looking for in this world? It's all here within myself. Yogananda tells a wonderful story, and if you've studied his teachings, you probably will remember this story, but I love it because it's so true. It's the story of the musk deer in India. And the musk deer has a pouch in his abdomen that exudes the beautiful fragrance of musk. And he will become crazed, looking for the source of this beautiful fragrance. And he'll run here and run there, looking everywhere. Where's the source of this beauty? And Yogananda says sometimes he will even chase off a cliff and he will fall to his death, looking for that elusive fragrance. And then the hunter comes and he takes the pouch away. And Yogananda says we are like that musk deer. We're looking for fulfillment everywhere except where it truly is, in the self. A friend was telling us recently that she feels like she's in a state of grace all the time. And her world is very beautiful because of that state of grace. And then the next words out of her mouth were, And I'm so grateful. I'm just living in gratitude. I'm all the time saying, thank you, God. Thank you. Thank you. And I was so touched by that because living in gratitude is the surest way to attract that divine grace. Be grateful for every breath. We can't even take breathing for granted. There's too much COVID out there. We have to be grateful for everything, for every fruit that we eat, every friend that we have, every pet that we love, every relative, every job, everything, even the things that we don't think are quite so worthy of gratitude. Be grateful. Of course, I have to tell you the story of the hiding place, and these two sisters in Holland, was it Holland? In World War II, were very deep Christians. And the Nazis came in and started killing the Jews, rounding them up, exterminating them. And so these two elderly sisters started taking them in with their even older father, who was well into his 80s, I believe. So they started hiding Jews to save them. And this went on for quite some time. They saved many people's lives. But then the Nazis came for them. And I've always remembered that the sister who was telling this story, who wrote the book, she was deathly sick with the flu when the Nazis came. So you can imagine not only this horror of being carted away, and they never saw their elderly father again. He was just gone from them. But not only that, but she was just could hardly think from being so sick. When tests come, sometimes they're very intense. So she and her sister were in a Nazi concentration camp, and they held secret prayer meetings, and they gave the light to everyone they met, and they were stellar examples, especially the other sister, not the one who wrote the book, but the one who wrote the book really revered her older sister as a saint. And they had many trials, many tests. And one of them was that the barracks where they were living was ridden with fleas. So it was just incredible itching and horrible intensity. It was just rampant with fleas. And Corey, who was writing the book, said to her sister, "Well, I can be grateful for everything, but not for these fleas." And her sister said, "Oh yes, we have to be grateful even for the fleas." And then, when they were holding a secret prayer meeting late at night, they heard the guards coming. And they were all gathered. They couldn't get back to their bunks fast enough. They would be punished or killed if they were found. And they heard the guards coming, and they heard the door opening. They were all frozen in fear. And then they heard the guards say, "Oh, let's not go in there. It's too full of fleas." And they were saved. Be grateful for everything. Know that everything comes from God. And try to, in meditation, lift your eyes to this point. Don't strain. Don't give yourself a headache. But as we teach in our meditation classes, just hold your thumb out in front of you, up a little, and just have your gaze there. Remember, in meditation, it's very important to not think. Don't let your mind go, okay, 20 more minutes and then it's lunchtime, and what am I going to make for lunch? Don't do any of that. Chant Om, or Swami Kriyananda would recommend the mantra Om Guru. Just chant that at the point between the eyebrows. Keep your gaze still, keep your body still. We did this tensing and relaxing exercise. It's very good to do before meditation. And Swami would lead us in that exercise, and then he would say, exhale, relax, now dump the body. Dump the body. We are not this body. We are the divine light. Let's live in that thought. Think of yourself. I like to try to remember to think of myself as an instrument of God's light. That's all I'm here for. I had a friend many years ago who talked about driving, and this was even before the road rage that rages now on the highways. And she said, when I'm driving, I just think of myself as creating space for others. Okay? Just have the space. Being gracious, being friendly on the roads instead of being angry. So think of your life as just being an instrument for kindness, an instrument for love and blessing to others. If we live in that thought, we generate the magnetism of love that draws God's grace into our lives. Keep practicing meditation, keep practicing love, and we will realize ourselves as that divine light. God bless you.
This topic, the eternal now, brings up some interesting and challenging sort of implications for us. One of the lines in Yogananda's amazing mystical poem, Samadhi, where he describes the experience of cosmic consciousness that Nirmala was referring to, after which he asked his guru Sri Yukteswar, when will I find God? And Sri Yukteswar sort of answered him in this very humorous way. Do you imagine that he's some king sitting on a throne in some antiseptic corner of the universe? No, he's the joy that you feel in meditation and the guidance that you feel in every situation in life. God is that joy inside of us. But this eternal now brings up an interesting point, because in that poem, Yogananda, one of the lines says, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, I realized thoughts of all men, past, present, to come. And I don't know about you, but if you think of taking in, literally, all the thoughts that have ever happened in the history of the world, or that are happening in this moment, or that will happen in the future of this world, whoa, that's a lot of thoughts. That's a lot to take in. And it sort of begs the question, what is time? And Swamiji in this reading gives us the sense that, and Christ, because he's quoting Christ, is saying, lift up your eyes to the harvest. It's ready now. It's now. It's not yesterday and it's not tomorrow. It's right now. There was a fascinating little story that came up, and Swamiji quoted this story or described this story in his book, Conversations with Yogananda, in which at Mount Washington there was an incident where late in the night, one of the people nearby Yogananda's rooms heard this tremendous clatter. You know, it sounded like sort of pots and pans banging into each other. And then this voice spoke, but not in a language that we would understand, spoke to Yogananda. And the essence of what was being discussed was that this person was asking to be relieved of some duty or perhaps given some duty. And then the noise happened again and the sound stopped. And Yogananda later described what happened was that in a former life he had been the king of Spain. And in that incarnation, one of his knights was serving him. Well, that knight came to him in this time at Mount Washington in the late 40s or early 50s, appeared to him, requested to be absolved of some duty or something, some request was made. Yogananda did whatever was asked or responded in some meaningful way, and then the man disappeared again. And you think, well, now, wait a minute. This person was living in the 1300s, maybe the 1400s, and suddenly appeared in the 20th century and then disappeared again. It's all happening now. All of what we think of as our past, all of what we think of as our future, it's all right now. And so if you think of one of the implications of that is we are already free. We are free already. There's a beautiful, Michelle may be able to correct me since I'm diving into Star Wars lore here, but there's a moment at the end of the very first Star Wars movie. I'm talking about the first one from the 70s, it's probably the fourth one in the sequence now, but anyway, right at the end, Darth Vader is chasing Luke Skywalker in their two little spaceships, and he's closing in. Luke is closing in on being able to destroy the Death Star, and Darth Vader is closing in on Luke trying to destroy this Death Star to try to kill Luke's spaceship, and he's wiggling around, and finally he gets the target lock on Luke Skywalker's ship, and he says the immortal words, "I have you now," which of course he doesn't have him now because Han Solo comes blasting in and knocks Darth Vader's spaceship tumbling through space, and he doesn't ever get the shot off, and then Luke is able to kill the Death Star, and it's all great, and it's all a happy ending. But memorize those words. I have you now. You don't have to say them like Darth Vader said them. But just think. I have you now. I have the divine right now. Swamiji says in the reading, God is as much with us now as he will ever be. And yeah, like Nirmala said, we can look in the mirror, we can look at the closed eyes, point between the eyebrows and think, I don't know, not seeing a whole lot here. We have to improve our knowing and not get distracted one direction or the other direction. And that's very easy to do. And we might even say it's very natural to do. I read a lovely story. I love it when I run into these stories that I've never heard Master tell. So I'll share one of them with you, and I have a feeling probably none of you have heard it either. It comes from a very obscure set of lessons from many decades ago. Yogananda is describing a scenario, and I have a feeling by the way he describes this that it actually happened. It's not just one of these apocryphal stories. He doesn't name names, but he sometimes didn't do that when there was a situation that actually happened. So there was a saint and his disciples, and they were bathing in the river. Very normal situation in India. And in comes a man riding a horse. And the man riding the horse rides the horse into the river, climbs off the horse, and proceeds to begin washing the horse in the river. Okay, not any big deal, except that he happened to be doing so near to the saint that the water he was splashing on the saint, which wasn't sort of appreciated by his disciples, you might say. In fact, it was looked upon as rather of an insult by the disciples, which in that situation it was. It was, it'd be sort of like, you're dusting your coat off right into somebody's food at the next table or something. It's just kind of distasteful. Well, the disciples got very upset about this and were about to go and, have at least speech with the man, you might say, perhaps something more vigorous than speech. And the Guru said, let him be. And the horse promptly kicked the man, injured him fairly seriously, and the saint went over to the man to help him. And Master does not say, and he was healed in that moment. He doesn't specify the net result of it. But he did say that because it was a saint, and because he didn't allow this commotion of the disciples to happen, that the sort of retribution for it came suddenly to the man. Now, what I like to think about this is that, yes, that man washing the horse had the obliviosity, that's probably not a word, but he was oblivious enough to sort of be washing his horse onto a saint. Okay, so that's maybe not the greatest karma in the world. But he had the good karma. Yes, he got kicked by a horse, and that's not so great either. But he had the good karma to have the saint come to him afterwards, to console him and, help him. And there is a saying in the Indian scriptures, even a moment in the company of a saint can be your raft over the ocean of delusion. Even a moment. And I have seen it with my own eyes. I am still in touch with a woman from Iran who met Swami Kriyananda once for a matter of minutes, regards him as her guru to this day, is stuck behind, a wall. She can't pay for anything outside of that country because the banks don't work, the credit cards don't work. She has money. She's not able to do anything, go anywhere beyond that country. But that moment in Swami's company, it was literally just minutes. I was able to introduce her to Swamiji. She met him briefly and then went on with her life and back to Iran. That contact can have tremendous transforming power if we grab onto it, if we claim it as our own. And so what do we have to do in all of this? We have to get rid of the hypnosis that says, I don't have him now. I'm a mess. I don't have anything right now. I'm all distracted. I'm all entangled. I'm all whatever I am. I have him now. We are one. Quote the words of Christ. I and my Father are one. He's not saying that to lord it over us. He's saying that to tell us we have that potential. These things that I do and greater will you do. And yes, we, as Swamiji points out in the reading, if we think that it's going to take time, then guess what? It takes time. We get the privilege of having a self-fulfilling prophecy and sort of making it our own and saying, okay, well, I think so, therefore it is. Well, what if we think otherwise? Well, that takes effort. That takes practice. That takes kind of retraining. It's one of the reasons we love chanting, and it's one of the reasons that Yogananda said chanting is half the battle. Because when we sing a chant like, fill my body with the sound of Om, or night has flown, dawn has come, wake my children, wake, sitting in the asana of meditation, think ye of thy Guru's lotus feet. We're turning the consciousness, turning the energy onto this point between the eyebrows, which is white to harvest right now. Yes, in this world things do take time, but in the world of spirit it's all now. So let's dive into that now, experience that reality for ourselves, and live it as our own divine birthright.